Kristi Johnson, like many little girls, dreamed of a Hollywood star's life from childhood, being beautiful, wealthy, and famous. She grew up in a loving family, had a happy childhood, and ambitious plans for the future. Kristi's desire to become famous came true, but unfortunately, not due to her talents, but because of the cruelty of her killer. And the details will shock you because her body was found with a torn-off ear. Born in 1981 in Santa Clara, California, Kristi soon moved with her parents, Teresa and Kirk Johnson, to the small town of Saugatuck in Michigan. It was a cozy and picturesque place with a population of less than 1,000 people, where an atmosphere of peace and security prevailed. Crime here was extremely low, so locals didn't even lock their doors, not fearing criminals. Everyone in the community knew each other. Kristi grew up along with her brother Derek, who was a few years older, in a family that seemed friendly and happy at first glance. However, the family idyll was shattered when the parents decided to divorce. Despite this, they maintained a good relationship for the sake of the children. According to the custody plan, Kristi and Derek alternately lived with their mom and dad. Due to such circumstances, the girl got involved in household chores early and started helping her mother at the age of 12, including with the family budget. Striving for financial independence, Kristi tried to get any job so as not to ask her parents for money. Meanwhile, her brother went to serve in the army and then decided to become a career military man. While studying in high school, Kristi, having become independent, took her life into her own hands. Intelligence and natural beauty helped her in this. The girl was cheerful, fun, and an interesting conversationalist. She looked great thanks to an active and healthy lifestyle. Relatives, admiring Kristi's beauty, advised her to conquer Hollywood. The girl got the most pleasure from sailing, surfing, and other water activities that she enjoyed when visiting her grandmother in California. However, after returning to Michigan, Kristi missed her favorite hobbies and needed time to adjust to a different way of life. Here she became passionate about theater, being a member of a small acting group. In winter, she worked part-time as a waitress in a local cafe. Thanks to her friendliness, politeness, and sociability, Kristi became a real find for the owner of the establishment, attracting more and more visitors. Kristi increasingly thought about leaving the small town of Saugatuck. The measured life of the province did not appeal to her. The girl was convinced that she deserved something more than just serving food in a cafe. Kristi saw no serious prospects for herself in this town. After graduating from high school in 1999, she finally gained enough freedom to start building her own life and path to success. Having thought over her situation, Kristi decided to go in search of herself. The girl traveled to different cities, worked there, and tried her hand at various fields of activity. Eventually, in 2000, she chose California, which she loved so much, as her place of residence. This state attracted her with its wonderful climate and much wider opportunities for realizing her potential. At first, Kristi moved in with her grandmother, who lived in the small resort town of Santa Maria with a population of 100,000 people. Despite being close to her favorite entertainment, the girl first focused on solving important issues. First of all, she started looking for a job, because providing for herself was very important to her. Kristi got a job as a system administrator in the city's electric power company. Then she focused on her education and decided to enter the University of California. The educational institution was located a 40-minute drive from her grandmother's house. Kristi successfully passed the entrance tests and bought a car with the money she had earned earlier. However, even with her own transport, daily trips over such long distances took too much of her time. Therefore, the girl began to look for a job closer to the university. This is how Kristi first touched her dream Hollywood. She managed to get a part-time job with a film crew that was planning to shoot a movie. The experience of performing in a theater group helped the girl quickly adapt to the new working atmosphere. Eventually, she was hired as an assistant on the set of a thriller. Here, Kristi met people who lived and breathed Hollywood. For a girl from the province, it was a real starry moment. She communicated with world-famous actors and directors and felt incredible happiness. Kristi could not believe that she had the opportunity to interact with celebrities. The world of cinema completely captivated her. This work inspired young Kristi so much that she wanted to be even closer to the film industry. The girl enrolled in professional makeup courses taught by Hollywood makeup artists. Having mastered these skills, she thought about becoming a makeup artist on a film set. For this, Kristi was going to go to the city of her dreams, Los Angeles. Although it was quite a risky journey, curiosity overcame the fear of the unknown. The girl was irresistibly drawn to Hollywood. Eventually, Christine moved to Los Angeles, a city where several famous film studios are located at once. For a young and attractive girl, it was a real period of trials and temptations, but she demonstrated the best manners and decency that only a young lady is capable of. Despite the popular trends in the environment she found herself in, Christine did not lead a dissolute lifestyle. The girl avoided noisy parties and get-togethers, remaining a rather modest person. She had a relationship with a guy she had met a few years ago and continued to communicate with, overcoming the distance between them. Later, he moved to Christine, and starting from 2002, the young people decided to rent an apartment in Los Angeles together. Since they had not yet achieved financial stability, such a step was beneficial for both of them. It was a difficult adventure, but Christine did not lose heart and began to look for a new job on a permanent basis. However, difficulties arose with this. The girl managed to find only temporary part-time jobs, and there was no serious work. The lion's share of their joint budget was earned by her boyfriend. Meanwhile, relations between Christine and Todd became more and more tense. Later, the girl complained to her mother that verbal altercations with her beloved increasingly turned into physical violence on his part. She found herself trapped in a toxic relationship, complicated by financial hardship. Christine's mother began to look for new housing for her daughter so that she could move away from her problematic partner. Eventually, Christine broke up with her boyfriend and settled in a small apartment. She continued to get an education remotely. During this period, her father provided the girl with substantial financial support. He believed that his daughter would finally find her place in life and realize her calling, so he sought to help her in every possible way. By November 2002, Christine finally managed to get a job at a mobile communications company, but this position was far from her ideals. Neither the field of activity nor the level of income met the girl's expectations. In addition, Christine still could not find acceptable housing near her place of work. Instead, her mother found a cozy house in the town of Santa Monica, neighboring Los Angeles, which had to be shared with 2 more girls. The attractive thing was that it was located next to the beach in a lively residential area. It seemed like an ideal place to get on her feet, so Christine moved there. During this period, the girl transferred to the University of Santa Monica. Christine's dreams of Hollywood did not come true. She failed to start a career, her relationship with her beloved fell apart, and she was actually forced to start her life from scratch. However, the girl did not lose heart and continued to steadily go towards her dream. On February 15, 2003, Christine planned to attend a party. Before that, the young beauty visited a shopping center. She had a long phone conversation with her mother, during which they discussed the girl's plans for the future. This call was Christine's last contact with her loved ones. The next day, on Sunday, February 16, 2003, the mother was eagerly waiting for a call from her daughter, hoping to hear about how the previous day had gone. However, the girl never got in touch. The worried woman tried to call Christine herself, but her phone was unavailable. At first, this did not cause serious concern, because the daughter could be resting or at work and not hear the call. However, the next day there was still no news from Christine. Around 9 in the morning, the alarmed mother called her daughter's work. Christine was always in touch and answered calls, but this time an answering machine worked instead of her. Then the woman contacted the girl's manager, who informed her that she had not shown up for work. He emphasized that Christine was a very responsible employee, and during the last 3 months she had no delays or absenteeism. The girl's absence surprised all her colleagues, but they also could not reach her. As the manager said, Christine was last seen at work on February 14th. One of her co-workers recalled that the girl was going to some party. The mother of the missing girl visited her daughter's page on social networks, hoping to find useful information about this event. But in vain, Christine had not published a single photo. Although previously she actively maintained her profile, actually documenting every step of her life. The woman also checked her daughter's bank accounts, but no transactions had been made since her disappearance. In search of her daughter, the mother called all the hospitals, but Christine was not registered anywhere. So on February 17th, she decided to contact the Santa Monica Police Department with a statement about the disappearance of her 21-year-old daughter. The investigators checked whether a girl matching the description had been involved in traffic accidents during these days, but found nothing. The missing beauty's neighbors also heard nothing about her since her disappearance. The police turned to Christine's ex-boyfriend, Todd, with whom she had a rather stormy and sometimes violent relationship. The version was considered that he could have found his beloved who had run away from him and done something to her. But the young man denied seeing the girl. Kristine's neighbors were only able to provide superficial information about the last day they saw the girl. According to them, on Saturday, February 15th, the missing girl was going to some party, but with whom and where exactly they did not know. The same information came from the girl's colleagues when they communicated with her mother. This clue became the first in the investigation, so the detectives began to carefully check it. Later, another detective joined the case. While reviewing the collected materials, he was struck by the photo of the missing girl. The crime victim bore a striking resemblance to another girl who had disappeared earlier and was found dead in 1995. That girl, starting her modeling career, agreed to a photo shoot for the glossy magazine Photographer. But these plans were not destined to come true. It was about Linda Sobek, killed by photographer Charles Redburn. He lured the beautiful blonde out of town by deception, where he dishonored and took her life. The policeman knew that at the time of Kristine's disappearance, Linda's killer was already serving a sentence in prison, so physically he could not be involved in the new crime. However, it could be a follower of Charles who was inspired by his scheme of action. Detectives needed at least some clue related to the missing girl, so they put out an alert for her car, a white Mazda Miata. At the same time, while communicating with Kristine's mother, investigators found out more details about the girl's ex-boyfriend Todd, and also learned the name of her new chosen one, Lucas. However, the woman knew very little about the latter. She could not even name his last name, which greatly complicated the search. More than 48 hours had passed since Kristine's disappearance, a critical period in such cases. The police seriously considered the possibility that the girl might already be dead. They began to analyze the billing data of her mobile phone. It turned out that the last outgoing call was made on February 15th at 17:34. Kristine called the directory service at 411, which could indicate that she was in trouble and was trying to clarify an address or someone's phone number. The conversation lasted about 3 minutes, so this communication could be of great importance for the investigation. Unfortunately, it was not possible to find out the exact content of the dialogue, since such calls were not recorded. After that conversation, the girl's mobile phone was discharged. The last location of the gadget, recorded by the system, indicated the area of Ventura Boulevard. The police decided to involve the media in the investigation. The headlines immediately featured messages about Kristine's disappearance with hints of the similarity of this case to Linda's murder. In search of clues, investigators carefully searched the apartment where Kristine lived. Among the finds was a receipt from a lingerie store, dated the day the girl disappeared, February 15th. The police managed to find out that, despite the aggressive behavior of her ex-boyfriend, Kristine continued to maintain contact with him. Sometimes she visited him, the last time on February 7th. But the detectives managed to find the most serious clue while studying the missing girl's email. On February 13th, Kristine sent a message to the party coordinator, in which she expressed a passionate anticipation of the holiday and her intention to buy a ticket. In response, she was informed about the complete sale of tickets, but assured that she would be included in a separate waiting list. This is a fairly common practice among organizers of events. With the participation of celebrities in this way, they encourage visitors to buy VIP tickets at greatly inflated prices. Finally, the police managed to find Kristine's new boyfriend, Lucas, and talk to him. According to the young man, he last saw the girl on February 14th, the day before her disappearance. They watched a movie together, after which they parted. Lucas successfully passed a polygraph test, had a reliable alibi, and did not arouse any suspicion among the investigators. Later, the detectives interrogated Kristine's ex-boyfriend Todd, but he also had an alibi, confirmed by several witnesses. It turned out that at the time of the girl's disappearance, Todd was out of town. Among all the versions, the police were most interested in the one that was associated with the party where Kristine was heading and from where she never returned. Investigators were convinced that the key to unraveling the girl's disappearance lies here. They contacted the organizers of the event and were shocked by what they heard. It turns out that Kristine never bought a ticket and did not show up at the party. But where did the girl go then? To restore the chronology of events on the fateful evening, the police tracked transactions from the missing girl's bank card. This helped to establish all the stores that Kristine visited that day. Law enforcement officers carefully reviewed the recordings from video surveillance cameras in these establishments, hoping to identify something extraordinary or stumble upon clues. But this painstaking work took a lot of time. In parallel with the analysis of these data, the police received an alarming call. A woman named Susan Murphy reported a suspicious guy she met at a store. He introduced himself as Victor Thomas, an employee of a film company that conducts casting for a new James Bond movie. The man began to put psychological pressure on Susan, inviting her to the role of Bond's girl and admiring her beauty. He persistently inclined the woman to participate in the casting, but this seemed extremely suspicious to her. Susan barely managed to refuse at the last moment. Fortunately, she went to meet with the stranger accompanied by her husband, a former police officer. Susan's husband personally spoke with Victor, trying to inquire about his true intentions, but the suspect suddenly fled without providing any useful information. Later, Susan decided to check all the data she knew about Victor and found out that he was lying. Victor Thomas had nothing to do with the film industry. Moreover, a person with that name did not exist at all. It seems that the man invented a legend similar to Linda Sabik's killer in order to meet a beautiful woman. But for what purpose remained a mystery. Although Susan's story ended well, Victor was still at large and could continue his shenanigans. Therefore, the police urgently began to check the received information and search for the suspicious guy. It was quite possible that he had evil intentions. Investigators studied the recordings from surveillance cameras of all the stores where Christine made purchases on the eve of her disappearance, but found nothing worthy of attention. Then they decided to go around the shops and interview the staff. The salespeople were shown a sketch of Victor, who allegedly harassed beautiful girls. In one of the stores, the cashier recalled seeing a similar man, but could not provide any more details. Eventually, an artist arrived on the scene to compile a sketch of the suspect. The search for Christine was gaining momentum. Dog handlers with dogs and volunteers were sent to the area from where the girl last got in touch and called the directory service. Patrols and volunteers continued to look for the missing girl's car and Christine herself. There were many messages from citizens that a similar car was seen in different places, but all these clues turned out to be false. Finally, on February 24th, an important signal was received by the police. In the parking lot of the shopping center that Christine visited on the day of her disappearance, her car was found a white Mazda Miata. The forensic expert who arrived at the scene conducted a thorough inspection of the interior, seized fingerprints and all potential evidence. A bottle of water was found on the back seat, and the missing girl's mobile phone was on the front seat. But the investigators were most surprised by the story of the parking lot guard. The man recalled a strange incident related to this car. The car drove into the spot at 17:45, although it was reserved for another client. Some man got out of the car who, upon hearing the guard's remark, behaved extremely aggressively. The stranger threw the car keys at the guard and left without any explanation. There was no one in the cabin at that time. Unfortunately, there were no surveillance cameras in the parking lot, so it was not possible to see the driver. Having no clues, the detectives decided to return to the analysis of Christine's purchases on the day of her disappearance. What they found shocked the investigators. On the eve of her disappearance, the girl bought clothes that exactly matched the description provided by Susan. When inviting the woman to the casting, Victor asked her to wear an extremely short black mini-skirt, a white blouse, stockings, and shoes. It was these very items that were paid for with Christine's credit card. The police ruled out the possibility of a simple coincidence. It seemed that the girl had fallen for the bait of a fraudster whose true motives remained a mystery. Christine repeated Susan's fate. Only the latter was lucky to have an escort in the form of her husband. Unfortunately, no information about the mysterious Victor could be found, and law enforcement officers were at an impasse. They turned to Christine's roommates again. The girls recalled that the missing woman was indeed going to some kind of casting, but they could not provide any details. During the conversation, they managed to remember that the audition was definitely related to a James Bond movie. According to them, Christine was extremely excited on the eve of the event. The description of her outfit, a blouse and a mini-skirt in which she left the house, completely coincided with the officers' fears. Christine was very afraid of being late for the casting scheduled for 17:30. She was wearing the exact revealing clothes that the villain had asked Susan to wear, and possibly Christine herself. Detectives continued to review the surveillance camera footage over and over again, hoping to find Victor. Eventually, they managed to spot the right man in the store where the employees mentioned him. However, the video quality was so low that it was impossible to make out facial features. Still, it was at least some kind of lead. Using eyewitness testimony, investigators were able to compile an approximate portrait of the suspect. By February 26th, a sketch of the main suspect in the disappearance of the young beauty was created. One of the experienced detectives, having familiarized himself with the case materials, recognized Victor Paleologus in it, who had been released on parole very recently, on January 20th, 23. In the past, the man had already been convicted of a sexual crime. Among the episodes of his rich criminal past, there was a case when he lured a woman named Kristi Johnson to his apartment in a similar manner. After inviting her to a supposedly noisy party with celebrities, Victor met the victim in an empty, quiet house. There he began to harass the guest, and when she resisted, he attacked her. The attacker used a rope, strangled Kristi with it, and then tried to tie the woman up for violence. But the victim had enough strength to break free, run out of the apartment, and call the neighbors for help. Victor Paleologus used the same scheme, luring victims with promises of casting or invitations to parties. This technique worked flawlessly, especially near the Walk of Fame. Many girls came to Los Angeles in search of fulfilling their Hollywood dream, and villains like Victor took advantage of this. For the first attack on a girl, Paleologus got off with only a suspended sentence. Later, there was an attempt to dishonor Katie DeBiono in 1998. Then he called himself Brian, a movie producer. For this crime, he was punished with a minimum term. There was reason to believe that Victor was also involved in embezzlement of funds in the company where he previously worked. In addition, the police identified many other victims, women whom Paleologus tried to use. However, all the statements of the victims were ignored by law enforcement officers due to lack of evidence. Once Victor broke into the house of his ex-girlfriend. Although he did not manage to bring his criminal intent to the end, the man still stole money and jewelry from the home. And even for this act, he got off with only a suspended sentence. Later, an even more serious case occurred. Victor lured a girl named Heather into a trap. As always, he incited her to dress in a seductive manner. It seems that this particular appearance of the victim excited him the most. Then Paleologus tried to tie the girl up in order to get intimate, but Heather miraculously managed to break free. Somehow she managed to push the attacker away with the sharp heel of her shoe. These precious seconds allowed her to run out of the trap and hide in her own car. The girl filed a statement against the offender. For this crime, Victor received 2 years in prison, but was released on parole on January 20th, 2003. This happened just 3 weeks before Kristi's disappearance. It seems that once at liberty, the repeat offender took up the old. By the time the police got on the trail of Paleologus, he had already been arrested. This time he stole a BMW X5 in Beverly Hills and tried to sell the car with forged documents. The detainee was found to have a wallet with a whole bunch of stolen IDs, credit cards, and other documents. Victor perfectly matched the type of criminal involved in Kristi's disappearance. His handwriting completely coincided with what was known to the investigation. All the facts pointed to Paleologus, so the detectives decided to show his photo to Susan, who avoided the attack thanks to the intervention of her husband. At the police station, Susan unhesitatingly pointed to Victor's photograph among other pictures. Later, during the identification procedure, she again unmistakably identified him, noting that she immediately recognized the man, despite obvious attempts to change his appearance. Paleologus slouched a little, extended one arm, making it longer than the other, and combed his hair in a new way. But all these tricks did not help him avoid exposure. During a separate check, Susan's husband, who once tried to detain the criminal, also recognized him. Unfortunately, the parking lot guard where the missing girl's car was found could not identify the suspect. He only managed to see Victor for a moment from afar and in the dark, without seeing his face. At the time the photo was presented, Paleologus was already behind bars, although on the day of Kristi's disappearance he was still at large. During the interrogation, the suspect denied any involvement in the girl's disappearance and flatly refused to admit the fact of communicating with Susan, despite the presence of irrefutable evidence to the contrary. Victor refused to testify without a lawyer, explaining this by his recent parole and fears that he was being framed. So the detectives continued to collect evidence against him. Soon a new witness came forward, a realtor who had been working with Victor for the last few weeks and noticed some oddities in his behavior. Paleologus was looking through a real estate agent for a house worth up to $700,000. They inspected several properties every day, when suddenly a message came about the disappearance of documents and keys from one of the houses. Then the realtor did not even suspect that his client could be involved in this. But as soon as he saw Victor's photo in the news summary, everything fell into place. The witness also identified the suspect. According to him, their last meeting took place just a day before Kristi's disappearance. Then Victor behaved strangely. He was somewhat nervous. In one of the inspected houses, he went to the toilet and began to shout loudly from there. allegedly checking the quality of sound insulation. The police suggested that this way the man could look for a place for his criminal actions, where the screams of the victims would remain unheard. Detectives examined all the houses that Paleologus visited. They paid special attention to the object that so intrigued the suspect. Interestingly, this dwelling was located in the same area where Kristine's mobile phone signal was last recorded. Investigators literally turned the house upside down, looking for at least some evidence of Victor's involvement in the girl's disappearance or her possible body, but found nothing. Meanwhile, searches continued in Paleologus' apartment. Photos of women in clothes that the suspect seemed to especially like were found on his computer. A short skirt, a white blouse, stockings, and high-heeled shoes. It had been 12 days since the start of the investigation, but the missing girl's family still cherished the hope of Kristine returning home alive. Victor continued to deny everything and was in no hurry to share any information with the police. He only confirmed the fact of meeting the girl, after which, according to him, they went their separate ways and he did not see her again. Victor Paleologus was born in 1962 in Pennsylvania into an ordinary family. He was the youngest of 5 brothers. The man graduated from college with a bachelor's degree, after which he entered graduate school in Los Angeles. From 1990 to 1993, he was married. Interestingly, some facts indicated that in 1991 Victor could have tried to poison his wife when she filed a statement against him. All of Paleologus' attempts to organize his own restaurant business failed. It seemed that this was a world-weary loser who had slipped into a life of crime. It seems that Victor's fetish for beautiful women forced him to cross a dangerous line, and he began to attack them for the purpose of intimacy and sexual gratification. Regarding the evening of Kristine's disappearance, Paleologus, together with his lawyer, provided an alibi. Allegedly, Victor had dinner with an acquaintance in a restaurant. This information was indeed confirmed, but law enforcement officers understood that despite this, the man still had enough time to play out another criminal drama and kidnap a new victim. On March 1st, another witness called the police. According to his statement, on February 15th, he saw the missing girl. She stopped near his house in search of some mansion that resembled a castle. The man could not help her because he himself did not know where this building was located. Instead, his wife, hearing their conversation, told Kristine the direction. The incident occurred around 1730. Now it became clear for what purpose the girl dialed the number of the directory service 411. She needed navigation to a building that looked like a castle. Investigators had a new lead. Moreover, it was in such a house that Victor checked the quality of sound insulation. Everything pointed to him. While the detectives were working with this data, a new event occurred. On March 3, 2003, 4 teenage friends were walking through the Hollywood Hills, admiring the picturesque panorama of Los Angeles. Suddenly, one of the guys, approaching the edge of a cliff, noticed some strange object below, 100 meters from him. At first, the young men thought it was a mannequin. They tried to go down to take a closer look at the find, but could not overcome the entire distance. However, this was enough to understand that it was a human body. The frightened guys for a long time could not decide what to do next because none of them took a mobile phone with them. Eventually, they went to the police station. On the way, the teenagers met a woman who was walking dogs and told her about the horrendous find. She approached the body to make sure the guys were not mistaken. The victim was wearing a gray hooded sweatshirt. Her legs were tied and wrapped in blue fabric. The hands of the deceased were behind her back, and a hairband was on her right wrist. Below the waist, tattered stockings were visible. Frightened by what she saw, the woman called the police. Soon, law enforcement officers and rescuers arrived at the scene. They had to sweat a lot to get the mutilated body from the hard-to-reach area. Obviously, the criminal hoped that his victim would never be found here. Perhaps this would have happened if it were not for the quick-witted teenagers who accidentally wandered into this deserted area. The forensic expert identified the deceased as the missing Kristi Johnson. Her body was found not far from the house that Victor liked so much during the real estate viewing with the realtor. The girl's parents were immediately informed about the tragic news, who could not believe the reality of what had happened and did not hold back their despair over the loss of their daughter. Kristine's entire body was covered with bruises and scratches, indicating desperate attempts to resist. The corpse was in a terrible condition and had time to undergo significant putrefactive changes, lying under the scorching sun for more than 1 day. In addition, it rained 1 day. The face was especially disfigured, which was facilitated by both numerous injuries and the unnatural position of the deceased's body with her head lowered. Someone tore off the girl's ear. The expert also noted large bruises on Kristine's head and neck, which indicated a traumatic brain injury and strangulation. Initially, this was recognized as the cause of death, but soon even more horrific details were clarified. Investigators had no doubt that it was Victor Paleologus who was involved in the murder of Kristi Johnson. However, it was necessary to prove that at the time of the girl's death, the suspect did not have an alibi. For this purpose, the detectives went to Joey, an acquaintance with whom Victor allegedly had dinner that fatal evening. But it turned out that in fact it was not a friend, but a casual acquaintance. During a thorough interrogation, the man admitted that he and Victor had agreed to meet much later than the incident with Kristi occurred. According to Joey, they met Paleologus only the day before. On February 15th, Victor was late for the meeting, arriving around midnight, although they initially planned to meet much earlier. The suspect's face had fresh scratches, which he explained as an accidental injury during the move. The police step-by-step recreated the probable sequence of events that preceded the disappearance of Kristi Johnson. According to the investigation, the criminal noticed a beautiful young girl in a shopping center where he often hunted for victims and decided to act according to the usual scenario. He introduced himself as a film industry worker and offered Kristi to audition for the role of James Bond's girl. Victor was remarkably convincing. Acting according to a well-established scheme, he showered the girl with compliments, assuring that she was perfect for this role. Given Kristi's youth and ambitions, she believed the villain and could not refuse the tempting offer. Paleologus scheduled a meeting in one of the houses that he recently inspected with a realtor, explaining that this was where the audition would take place. Kristi, somewhere deep down suspecting a trap, still prepared for the casting and dressed the way Victor asked. She arrived at the place with a slight delay, as she got lost on the way and contacted the directory service. This is how the girl found herself in the clutches of a deadly trap from which she never got out. During the meeting, Kristi became a victim of Victor's harassment, but desperately resisted and even managed to scratch his face. But she had nowhere to run, and the physically stronger man quickly overcame the resistance. Paleologus dishonored the helpless girl and then killed her to get rid of an unwanted witness. First, he hit her on the head and strangled her, and only then threw the mutilated body into the Hollywood Hills. But the most terrible thing was that the traumatic brain injury and strangulation did not lead to Kristi's instant death. The girl only lost consciousness, and the inhuman Victor mistook it for death. By throwing the body off a cliff, he doomed the victim to a slow and painful death. Kristi, having fallen from a considerable height, received numerous fractures and internal injuries. She regained consciousness for some time, but never waited for rescue, bleeding to death alone. Only a few hours later, the girl finally died from her injuries. On May 12, 2003, the district attorney officially charged Victor Paleologus with kidnapping, violence, and first-degree murder. However, the defense was fully prepared to defend the client's innocence because there was a lack of direct evidence of his guilt. The prosecution faced a difficult battle, so forensic experts used all the available weighty arguments. Victor's lawyers questioned the time of the victim's death, referring to the insects found on the body. Instead, prosecutors emphasized the striking similarity of the killer's handwriting with previous attacks on women. The cases were so identical that it was impossible not to mention them in court. Preparation for the trial was delayed, so Victor Paleologus appeared before the jury only in July 2006. The defense emphasized that the prosecution actually had no material evidence against the defendant, no DNA analysis, no fingerprints, no video surveillance recordings that would link him to the murder. This was explained by the fact that Kristi's mutilated body was found only 2 weeks after her disappearance, and during this time most of the traces had time to deteriorate. However, the testimony of women accusing Victor of harassment and attacks was more than enough. After their statements, the sympathies were on the side of the prosecution. Without exception, all the victims talked about Victor's remarkable talent for manipulation. The man was so careful and convincing that even the most cautious victims like Susan Murphy initially believed his sweet promises and agreed to take part in the alleged casting, not even suspecting what was really waiting for them. It seemed that after hearing this, no one had any doubts that it was Victor Paleologus who killed the unfortunate Kristi. But the defendant had a last ace up his sleeve. To avoid the death penalty, Victor proposed to make a deal with the investigation and plead guilty to a less serious crime. Now the fate of Paleologus was in the hands of the relatives of the deceased girl. At that time, the exhausting trial had been going on for 3 weeks and threatened to drag on for a long time. Given the uncertainty of the verdict and the burden of the grief experienced, Christine's family agreed to make concessions in exchange for a confession. However, Victor unexpectedly changed his mind and on the day of sentencing sent the judge an 11-page petition asking to cancel his confession. Fortunately, the law was on the side of justice, and it was no longer possible to cancel the previous statement. The court found Victor Paleologus guilty on all counts and sentenced him to life imprisonment with the right to parole no earlier than after 25 years. If you like this story, support the author with a like and subscription to the channel. And in the comments, share your impressions and thoughts about the investigation of this high-profile case. I also invite you to watch other videos published on the channel. Many thanks for watching. I love you and see you next time.